Um, Good afternoon and welcome to the IIMChat, the first one that is being held by the new PanIM Alumni Association's Exco team. I'd like to welcome members of the IIM alumni community, the IIT alumni community. Thank you, Avish, the president, for being here. The Thai community, thank you, Maya, for being here. Our past president, Sanjeev Iyer, and some distinguished alumni like Piyush Gupta. The new PanIM Alumni Association team took over in October of this year, and I'm fortunate that the team chose me to be the leader and the president of the association, and I'm delighted that I have with me an extremely strong team: Nayanthara Bali as deputy president, Deepika Deshpande as the secretary, Ashok Sengupta as the treasurer, and Anand Ramchandran as the event convener. One of the things that we set out to do is we said, what is the new direction that we can give the PanIM alumni community in Singapore? And very simply put, while we talked about it in some of our messages, it is that we needed to engage more within the community and engage more with the larger community in Singapore. And it is kind of pretty appropriate that the first real event that we are holding, the first IIMChat, is with what you would call the first citizen of India in Singapore, the High Commissioner of India to Singapore, His Excellency P. Kumaran. Welcome, Mr. Kumaran, and thank you very much for being with us today from the IIM alumni community. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suresh. My greetings to the IIM Alumni Association Management Committee team, and also to the IIT Alumni Association Management Committee team, and also to the other distinguished panelists and participants. It's really wonderful to join you today for the IIMChat event. I look forward to interacting with as many of you as possible. Give me my thoughts on the questions you might have, and to answer as many of them possible as satisfactorily as possible. Thank you very much.
I think from the IIM alumni community, we were very fortunate. The last High Commissioner was an IIM alumnus. This time, we are fortunate. We have an IIT alumnus. He's not from an IIM, but we won't hold that against you, High Commissioner. But we know that you hold both communities very close to our heart. So I think today what we'd like to do is to broadly talk about the man, the journey, get to know the High Commissioner in person, his mission, how does diplomacy work in this new era. Also, I think the agenda of what's going on in Singapore and what can, I think, we as a community do in Singapore and the road ahead for us. So without further ado, I'd like to get straight into this. High Commissioner, you studied technology and then you went into the foreign service. And that's a big leap. I mean, so what made you make that choice and, when you went into it?
Thank you. Normally when you ask this question, you expect to hear something like, I was inspired very early in my childhood to become a diplomat, to represent India, etc. But in my case, it was nothing of the sort. When I finished 10th grade, I generally developed an interest in engineering subjects, mathematics, physics, etc. So by the time I finished my 12th grade, my parents were keen that I choose medicine as a career. Unfortunately, there was greater interest in engineering on my part, and therefore I chose to do engineering. But at the back of the mind, there was this disappointment that I was unable to satisfy my parents' desires. So at the end of my engineering, again, they came back to me and said they would like one of their children to be a civil servant.
Okay.
Because they thought socially it was a big deal, it was more prestigious to have a child in the civil service. So for the second time, I didn't have a heart to disappoint them. I promised to give it a good shot. And if I got through, I would choose that as a career. And I was lucky enough to get in, and therefore that's the story.
So would you call yourself an accidental diplomat, but an accomplished one now, I guess?
Possibly. But once you commit to a career, I guess you need to work hard and do as well as possible.
And it's interesting you bring up this thing about parents, and I think all of us come from that background where our parents have imposed this. I mean, you have two young children. Do children today, are they willing to listen to parents and take them, or are your children saying, I'm going to make my own thing, Dad, leave me alone?
My children are fairly confident in their own choices. Both of them, in some ways, have been influenced by me. I used to throw problems at them from a very, very small age. Try to develop some kind of logical thinking ability, especially in a mathematical, scientific sense. So both of them seem to be engineering minds. Of course, this can change anytime. In a sense, I was able to influence them by persuasion rather than imposing anything on them. But they're free to choose their own careers.
And High Commissioner, coming to diplomacy, I mean, that is your career. And I think you've had a fairly distinguished career. You've been obviously in situations in India where you worked in the consular services, but I think you've been in Cairo, you've been in Pakistan, you've been in Sri Lanka, you've been in the US, you've been in Qatar before you came here. And that's a pretty large number of countries that you've kind of accumulated. I believe you speak Arabic fluently. The question I have for you is, do you have some interesting stories for us to share? I mean, not the trade agreements and all the business stuff, but in all these things, you must have accumulated some wonderful stories. I mean, are there any that pop out that, in your journey and your travels?
There are many exciting anecdotes that come to mind over the last 28 years that we've spent in the foreign service. It started with Egypt. I used to be single then. It was a great learning experience because our first 2 years were spent learning the language. All youngsters who join the foreign service invariably are allotted a language depending on an analysis of talent available in each language. You have to go to a posting depending on where that language learning facility is available, and you're sent to a learning facility to learn it. In our case, there were 3 of us from my batch who went to the American University in Cairo to study Arabic at the Arabic Language Institute there. We felt once again like students. Not that there was a huge gap between the time I left my student life and joined the foreign service. I actually was doing my master's just before joining the training at Missouri. So unlike other colleagues who had done some years of work before joining the service, for me, it seemed like a continuation of my student life. But it was good fun to go back to the drawing board and learn a language from first principles in a way, a language that was very different from any of the other languages I knew. Considering that my mother tongue is Tamil, Arabic is very, very different. I didn't speak too much of Urdu. And the script was very different. So, from there, I went to Libya, my second posting. Got married somewhere in the middle of that posting. My wife joined me. There's a wonderful Indian community there, and the range is very wide, all the way from factory workers to construction workers, to nurses, doctors, consultants, oil engineers. We had about 20 to 30,000 Indians in that place. Libya also has some wonderful, absolutely unspoiled beaches. It's today a very, very different country with a lot of violence, completely spoiling the kind of wonderful place it used to be. Next posting was Belgium. Great springboard for travel and for driving around Europe. We really enjoyed ourselves, just my wife and me at that time. We did not yet have children, and therefore we used to get out on a Saturday morning, look at the map and decide where to travel and just start driving, informing our ambassador on the phone and take permission virtually on the fly. It was great. And the European Union was such a great revelation as a wonderful example of conflict resolution. It is often described as the greatest conflict resolution exercise in the history of mankind.
Nice.
Countries that fought each other in 2 world wars, causing millions of casualties, came together and built trust and pooled their sovereignties in such a manner that today they have a customs union. Some of them are in a monetary union, and they have also pooled together many areas of their national competencies to provide these powers in part to a European Council on the basis of qualified majority voting. So it's an amazing experience working in the European Union. And the way the euro currency was rolled out was sometime around the time we were there. Currency came in 1999. We were there from 2000 to 2003. Initially, they only made the euro as a paper currency. There was no physical currency that was in circulation. So all your statements from the bank, etc., used to be in Belgian francs, but equivalent euro amounts were also indicated, just to get people used to it. And finally, in 2002, when the currency came out, the rollout was so smooth that it was a great example.
So making people used to the change in a very gradual way.
True. And the rollout was absolutely smooth. It's a wonderful example of how to manage change and how to bring in something as big as Europe.
And you went from the European Union, which you call the conflict resolution, to Pakistan and Sri Lanka, which are much closer home. And obviously, we don't want you to reveal any diplomatic secrets, but that must have been a very different experience.
It was indeed. But before we went to Pakistan, we spent about 4 years in India, 2 out of which were in Bangalore as passport officer. I wanted to do something different from traditional diplomacy. A passport officer's job is more of a management job. It's like running a factory that produces passports with as little trouble as possible to the applicants, coordinating with a large number of agencies, including the state police, policy issues to be coordinated with the ministry, manage queues, etc., manage online appointment systems in a way that causes minimum inconvenience to the people. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A lot of new initiatives were introduced through digitalization. It helped me use some of my technological learnings during my college days. And some of the ideas and the best practices generated in Bangalore those days eventually found a place in terms of the core ideas that went on to form the Passport Seva project.
Okay.
So it was extremely satisfying. Our next posting, of course, was Pakistan. I had asked for a posting to Sri Lanka at that time. I thought I knew Sri Lanka better, considering that I come from the southern part of India. One is exposed to news relating to Sri Lanka in a much bigger way. But I was asked to go to, my second choice had been Pakistan, and I was asked to go to Pakistan instead.
And it's an interesting thing because I've been told that it's the people are exactly the same, and there is very little problem at that. Well, there's a country divided by politicians. The two countries are. Is that been your experience?
No, absolutely. We went there with some apprehensions because it's conventional wisdom that Pakistan is one of the most difficult and challenging postings for an Indian diplomat. But looking back, it was a mixed experience. We had our good times. We enjoyed meeting a wide cross-section of the Pakistani society. We still have some really good friends we made during that time. As people, they're not very different from Indians. What complicates matters is the way the Pakistani establishment is organized, particularly the dominance of the Pakistani army and the armed forces in general. There is a narrative, there is a Pakistan doctrine, which basically revolves around the two-nation theory propounded by Mr. Jinnah. The army expects everyone to be committed to this two-nation theory. And there is a serious kind of propaganda that you see in Pakistani media, which tends to resolutely portray India as some kind of a perpetual adversary. And therefore, it makes it difficult for any kind of normal neighborly practices to work. One has to recognize that and to take initiatives that take into account this reality and find a way to work through this. The External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, has made a very detailed point about this in his book, The India Way, that came out a few months ago. Of course, the next two postings were Washington and Sri Lanka. Washington was a very interesting window for us into the thinking of the greatest superpower in contemporary history. Sri Lanka opened us up to a very, very wide range of foreign policy activities that we undertake in our neighborhood, all the way from economic and investment and trade activities to cultural links to development cooperation activities, reconstruction projects, political connections, very, very frequent exchange of visits, etc. It kept us extremely busy considering the kind of connections we have with Sri Lanka. In fact, one of the highlights was the bringing of the Kapilavastu relics from the National Museum special section in Delhi to Sri Lanka. And in fact, we held exhibitions in several parts of Sri Lanka. Millions of people witnessed it. Sri Lankans believe that being in front of the Kapilavastu relics of the Buddha is equivalent to being in front of the Buddha himself.
Interesting.
It is believed to have an equivalent effect. So it was something that was amazing to see people queuing up for long hours to just get a chance to visit the relics.
And it's an interesting thing. And, you not only obviously dealt with as a diplomat, but you've seen people in all these countries and you've seen Indians in all these countries. And one of the questions that I always say, there's this old thing about you can take the Indian out of India, you can't take India out of the Indian. Is the diaspora different in all these varying countries that that you're meeting, or do we still remain at the core what we are? Are there very different types of people, for example, in the US? And
you do find cross sections of the diaspora varying from one posting to another. Let me start with Singapore. Singapore is amazing. I didn't know until I was posted here and had my first conversation with my predecessor, Mr. Javed Ashraf, that there is such a high concentration of IIM and IIT alumni here. It was most impressive. Put together, I think it's over 6,000. The previous posting I was in, Qatar, had a Pan-IIT association. We didn't have an IIM association. And I believe the Pan-IIT membership was in the range of 80 to 100. And I used to think that that was a big concentration. I was stunned by the numbers here, obviously. And Qatar boasts of a huge Indian community of about 750,000. 70% of them being blue-collar workers, mostly factory workers, construction workers, house drivers, gardeners, housemaids, etc. So these are the main categories of blue-collar workers. And in the middle, you see retail shop floor workers, you see small businessmen, you see managers, etc. And all the way to people who work in government departments, consultants, big businessmen, people who own retail chains, etc. Lulu apparently is one of the big retail chains that has a significant presence in Qatar. There are a few others also owned by Indians or partnered or co-owned by Indians. It does, over the years, the cross-section of the Indian community itself has significantly. The composition of the states in this population has also been increasing. Originally, it used to be mostly Keralites. Interestingly, Keralites have started moving up the value chain, and a lot of blue-collar workers are increasingly from UP, Bihar, and other states. So it also tells you about how various states in India are doing, and which states that were initially inward-looking are able to send more and more workers outside. In the US, Belgium, etc., you see mostly professionals, like in Singapore, but in Libya and Egypt and in the Gulf, you see more blue-collar workers.
And what's interesting is you obviously mentioned in Libya and Qatar and in Singapore, you're seeing this. There's now a vast spread of Indians overseas, right? We're seeing the construction workers and all that. You're seeing all the way up to the IIT and IIM professionals. Do you see people, where is the primary association? Is it now shifting towards the professional associations, or are we still, I'm sure you've talked about the fact that there are Bengali associations and Gujarati associations and all that. Where is the identity of the global Indian evolving as you see it?
Different places have different arrangements. In fact, the most impressive arrangement I saw was in my previous post in Doha. Qatar does not openly allow community associations to function. You can't register as a community association with any local government department. So what used to be done was a lot of them register with the embassy as an Indian community association, and the embassy gives them some kind of an umbrella protection. So we had about 130 odd associations grouped under 4 verticals. And these 4 bodies that brought these 4 verticals were called apex bodies. The cultural apex body was called the Indian Cultural Center, which had a number of associations. There was the Indian Business and Professionals Council, which brought all the alumni associations, professional associations, business associations together. The third one was the Indian Community Benevolent Forum, which brought all community service organizations, community welfare organizations under one umbrella. And the fourth one was the Indian Sports Center, which brought together the Football Association, Cricket Association, Table Tennis, and so not only did it help coordinate activities better, all the associations under that apex body would help vote for the management committee of that apex body. So everybody had a stake in who they elected to manage the affairs of that vertical. And therefore, it worked very well. Not only that, it helped get different groupings together. For example, the Indian Cultural Center would have had the Gujarati Samaj, the Maharashtra Mandal, the Telugu Samiti, Tamil Sangam, and a number of other bodies under that. So all of them would come together for a large event organized by the Indian Cultural Center. So it gave us a wonderful opportunity to bridge differences between different associations, bring them all together for pan-India events. It worked extremely well. I don't see that.
Something we should seek to replicate here.
Yeah, that's exactly my plan. I don't know how much of interconnection there is between various organizations from different states of India here, but I think it's a good idea to try and bring in best practices from what I've seen in other postings.
Absolutely. I think some questions have started flowing in, High Commissioner, from the audience, but I have one question. Diplomacy in the time of COVID. I mean, diplomacy as we see it is always, you meet people, you meet the Prime Minister, you meet the Foreign Minister, you meet the civil servants, you're shaking hands, you're doing that stuff, right? You've been here 5 months now. I'm sure it's hard to meet the people and all that. So how does diplomacy actually happen in this era when, I mean, in some ways, people in business are used to it, but how do you do it now? I mean,
it is a challenge like in every other profession. All of us are struggling to deal with the challenges thrown up by the pandemic. Diplomacy itself has several elements that constitute what is broadly known as diplomacy. We have political work, we have economic and trade work, we have cultural work, we have information work, and consular work. Consular work goes on for a while. Our consular operations were shut down because we were trying to understand how to deal with the pandemic. But as Singapore started doing better and better and established a fair amount of control over the spread of the disease, it was possible to open up consular operations and go back to normal. Economic and trade work, people have adapted very well. We work on virtual platforms. A lot of discussions are still possible, except for the really sensitive ones, where still there is a need felt for face-to-face discussions. But on a large scale, one has adapted to the challenges of the pandemic. The most difficult element of diplomacy is political work, where you establish a certain equation of trust with fellow diplomats from other countries, try to get analysis of developments in the region, developments in the country where you're posted, and also when you hold dialogues between countries, for example, in the area of defense, one may not be comfortable discussing sensitive defense matters on an online platform. So therefore, you do miss direct face-to-face diplomacy sometimes. That area of diplomacy has probably taken a backseat. One feels that you're not able to do the normal kind of work that you do during normal times. So it is a challenge. We try and do as much of online work as possible, but we do struggle when it comes to.
High Commissioner, we have Piyush, who's literally, I mean, I think he's an IIM alumnus as well, and you know him personally. He's on the call. I understand to the audience there is some tech challenge because we're trying to do this hybrid model of me sitting with the High Commissioner in the office and trying to do it virtually on Zoom. Piyush, welcome. Thank you for joining in. I'm going to just do a little bit of.
I'm not sure what you did, Suresh. I lost you. I was hearing you till you muted yourself.
Piyush, can you hear us?
Now I can. I was hearing you all along. I sort of lost you in between. Hi, Kumaran. How are you doing?
Welcome to the show, Piyush. Thank you for dialing in. I mean, you know the High Commissioner already. I'm sure that you have met, but
I know him well. I know he's a shark on the golf course. That I can tell you.
Wow.
And so is he.
But he hits the longest ball that I know. So if any of you want to play golf with him, better watch out.
And Piyush,
High Commissioner, he's the second alum to tell me that you've taken money off them. And these are all bankers. So you've done well, obviously.
But taken money off us too. So it's been a bit of both. But Piyush doesn't give any strokes on the golf course. And I'm sure he's going to be equally difficult in this interaction too.
Piyush, anything to ask the High Commissioner or anything beyond, the golf rivalry here?
Actually, I'm not sure because since I'm sorry, I was on another call. I couldn't get off till now. But High Commissioner, outside of Singapore, it would be interesting to get your perspective on India-China. Obviously, things have not been easy, and on the defense front. But that's obviously spilled over now into this whole set of issues with Chinese companies, Chinese apps in the country. The reality, though, is like most other countries in Asia, our trade relations with China are not that easy to untangle. And frankly, both from a capital standpoint, technology standpoint, they continue to be a source of a lot of resources for everybody in the region. So what's your sense on the state of play and how do you see that going forward?
Thank you. I'll try and explain this as clearly as I can. The world is changing very fast. Let me try and put in a little bit of backdrop here. Today, there's only one superpower in the world, and the Russians, in some way, are diminished in stature compared to what the Soviet Union was in terms of presence as a superpower. We have China as an emerging superpower. And we are dealing with a world that is in a fair amount of flux. There is a trade war between the US and China, and the US is increasingly viewing China as a strategic competitor. They've made it clear in recent pronouncements. As a large power with ambitions that are global, we need to deal with these changes. Our aim is to try and optimally make use of global conditions in such a way as to preserve and promote our own national interests. Today, we need to engage the United States. We need to manage our relations with China. We need to cultivate the European Union. We need to engage with our neighborhood, find cooperative relations that help us grow and also enable our neighbors to grow. We need to expand our sense of neighborhood to include the Gulf on one side and East Asia on the other. And at the same time, in some ways also engage Japan, bring them into play. As our External Affairs Minister describes this relationship, the India-Japan relationship's potential has not been realized. So in many ways, the challenge for India is to run a multi-layered diplomacy. It's not a zero-sum game. Conditions with China are difficult right now after the clashes on the line of actual control. But The challenge is to manage the large economic relationships we have with China. Is the desire on the part of China to rise and emerge as a superpower. At the same time, develop a relationship that can protect our interests without necessarily coming into conflict with other powers that have ambitions for a global rule.
If I can, Suresh, follow up
I think
question.
he handled it like a good diplomat. I don't know how he handles you on the golf course.
Yeah, Suresh, if I want to follow up the question with the US question. So what's your sense, High Commissioner, typically in the last few decades, my sense is that India has always had a better equation with the Republican administration than a democratic establishment. All the usual issues the Democrats have around the human rights agenda, etc., etc. What is your sense of the India-US outlook going forward?
Thanks again, Piyush. Having lived in the US now, I'm convinced that the India-US relationship has moved to a significantly higher orbit than 10, 15 years ago. Today, it enjoys a bipartisan consensus. There are times when surprises come about, or surprises come our way. For example, the rise of President Trump and the policies that his administration adopted were not in line with some of the assumptions that we had given ourselves in dealing with the US. But we managed to navigate the different conditions fairly well. And we established a good cooperative relationship with the team of the administration of President Trump. Now we are looking at a different team coming in when President-elect Biden takes over. We will be looking at perhaps a set of variables that fit in more with the previous assumptions that we're used to. Mm-hmm. But overall, I think there is a broad consensus in the US that India is a natural partner. The rise of India as a global power is now seen as largely benign and in line with US interests. So the US, in fact, feels that the rise of India should be enabled because it fits into their larger vision for a cooperative global order. So I don't see any difficulty there. Irrespective of which party is in power in the US, I think we will see the India-US relationship going from strength to strength.
So I think, Piyush, I have a question actually for both you and the High Commissioner, and this is coming back closer home to Singapore. Clearly, it's a time of rising economic nationalism. We're seeing, people saying, what are you doing? What are you contributing locally? And from both your perspectives, we have the IIT community, the IIM community, the Thai community, many of them on this call. What do you see as the key issues? I mean, Piyush, you're a senior business leader, you're the High Commissioner, that you think that the community needs to focus on as we go forward? What ways, integrate more, do more good? So just getting your views on these from both of your side. Piyush, would you like to go first?
Well, here's, Suresh, it's quite clear this sense of nationalism, even tribalism, circling the wagons. It's a secular trend. It's been happening in many countries around the world. And I think the roots are economic more than anything else. So the COVID has exacerbated that. And you can see that in country after country. It creates anxieties because of the potential of job loss. And in that kind of environment, people tend to look for and look after what they think is their own. And so we've seen in Singapore, it's not different from what we've seen in other countries. There continues to be this great concern about the relative balance of migrant participation in the workforce here relative to local Singaporean participation. And as you step back, a lot of people have angst, but frankly, step back and it's not an unreasonable challenge. And frankly, in Singapore, it's particularly not unreasonable. 1/3 of the people in this country are not Singaporeans, and because it's a 700 square kilometer island, that's not a fact that gets hidden in like it does in a large country, a large landmass. It's in your face the whole time. So when you have economic challenges like this, it seems to me it's not unreasonable to expect that degree of anxiety from the local population. Uh, um, on the other hand, I also believe that some of this issue or concern, and particularly the issue and concern relative to the Indian diaspora, is partly of our own making. And I say that because I believe that in most countries, when you go into a host nation, I think it's incumbent on you to try and see what you can do to fit better or integrate better with the host nation. And I think it's a fair reflection that many Indians, and particularly the professional expatriate Indians who've come into Singapore in the last 10, 15, 20 years, could have done a better job of that integration. I believe the platforms are not there, and therefore I was really interested in the High Commissioner's suggestion of seeing what we can copy from Qatar and Doha. I think it's a great idea. But the platforms need to improve. But also each one of us needs to make a better effort. And each one of us, by that, if you're in a corporate entity, then corporates need to make a better effort. And if you're individuals, I think individuals need to make a better effort to integrate a little bit better. So to that extent, this new program you guys are rolling out, IIMPulse,
we're going it at the end. Give us a
okay. All right. So I won't go into that. But I think, therefore, any kinds of activities and programs that we can put together to encourage the sense of integration and participation are actually very good. I'll tell you a personal anecdote. I mean, just to tell you how sensitive these things are. So, as you know, when all the noise was made in Parliament a few months ago about my status and whether I'm a true Singaporean or not a true Singaporean, so it was actually quite interesting to me that I got a lot of community support, including members of Parliament. But I know from first-hand sources that when it was discussed, the incident, as high as the cabinet, the principal agenda and principal thing was, Piyush has really integrated well because, he's part of the community and this is the kind of person who's really additional and incremental to Singapore. In my case, I'm fortunate. My job allows me to do it. In fact, not allows me, it compels me to do it. For a lot of other people, the platform is not automatic. But I think we can all make a better effort. And if we can make a better effort in the integration process, I think the sharp edges, I think those will be smoothened out. Singapore is a very pragmatic country. I mean, it's known over the years and still knows that it has a tremendous reliance on an open border policy and a tremendous reliance on foreign talent and migrant population. And so the leadership of this country is not blind to that. And therefore, they will continue to be welcoming of talent. They just, again, like any pragmatic set of politicians, they just need to make sure they keep things in balance so they don't let it get, the sentiments at the ground out of control.
And High Commissioner, your views would be interesting on this.
I fully agree with what Mr. Piyush has said. There was a very interesting analysis that was offered to me about how at the top end of the labor market, Singapore needs top-class, world-class talent, and therefore Singapore would do everything to keep the top end of the market as open as possible. That is what drives innovation in Singapore, keeps it ahead of the curve, so to say. So despite challenges that Singapore faces in terms of perception, there is clarity that top level talent is required for Singapore, and that segment has to be kept open. At the bottom end, on the other hand, there are not enough Singaporeans to take all the jobs that are available at the lower end. Many Singaporeans are not interested in jobs at that end, and therefore that end also, in many ways, is open to foreigners to come in, foreigners of different kinds. It's only the middle end where a large number of Singaporeans feel they are adequately qualified and that they should be getting those jobs wherever possible. That is where the competition comes with foreigners who are similarly qualified. So they can't understand and they can't see why a foreigner would be more suitable for the job than they can be considering the quality of institutions that are available in Singapore that are ranked fairly well in Asia and in the world. So that is the competition that the government of Singapore is dealing with. And a perception has gained ground that somehow a level playing field is not available. A number of companies are in their comfort zone when they recruit from some geographies, etc. Not all of this is true clearly, but this perception clearly is politically problematic, and it has to be addressed in some way. What on the other hand, worries us is the possibility or the danger that this can degenerate into some kind of larger resentment against some particular communities. That resentment can pose serious problems, and both the government and the communities have to find ways to address this. As far as the Indian community is concerned, we need to make effort, like Piyush mentioned, to integrate with other communities, find ways to engage them, get ourselves involved in activities that are intercommunal in some way. And we also have a second problem, which is to integrate segments of the Indian community, what are traditionally referred to as old Indians, and the new generation of professionals that have come beyond the 90s. One gets the sense, even just a few months of my arrival here, that we may not have done enough to integrate various segments of our own community, and we need to do more work on that.
That's an extremely strong message from, I think, two leaders. And I think those of you in the committee who are listening, I don't think they could have said it in plainer English in terms of the efforts that we have made or need to make to integrate more into Singapore. High Commissioner Piyush, there are some questions from the audience, so I'm going to post them to you. And then to those in the audience who wondered what Piyush referred to, we'll talk about it. Both Piyush and the High Commissioner have worked with us on some new ideas that we're trying to do on this. So just very quickly going through some of the questions. The usual one that you should be expecting, High Commissioner, will there be normalization of travel between India and Singapore? What could be the timeline? I don't know whether you're a prophet, but...
What I can tell you is on the basis of available information. One, repatriation flights continue to operate. Tamil Nadu has more destinations considering the number of registrations we have. Other states, other destinations, less frequent. All the other metros, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, etc., are getting flights in the range of once every 8 to 10 days. On the other hand, flights, the same flights, when they come to Singapore, they are fairly lightly occupied, 20 to 30 passengers out of 200 seats available. A lot of it seems to be associated with the fact that re-entry permissions are available only in small numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I was assured by senior responsible ministers in the government of Singapore that the numbers have slightly increased since last week. We are hoping that more and more people will be able to come back, especially those holding employment passes already and who have jobs in Singapore where they have been working in the past. So I think it will open up. We have already proposed a limited travel resumption agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But there is still some kind of internal discussions going on in the Singapore government. I believe there is an interministerial exchange happening between the Health Ministry, Transport Ministry, and the Home Ministry to try and decide what kind of risks they can take, considering the fact that the COVID response in Singapore has been fairly successful. And the general feeling is that they are in a position where they can take a calculated risk. I'm hoping that at some point we do get to see a limited reopening of air transport between India and Singapore, but it is natural for the Singapore side to be concerned, given that on one hand, on the Singapore side, the number of cases per day, new cases per day is in single digits, and in India, we are in the range of 40,000 per day.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to be bothering them, and at some point, once they are in a position to decide on how much of a calculated risk they are able to take, we should be able to move forward in that direction.
Okay. There's another question which is coming around from your last posting in the Middle East on Qatar. Obviously, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, is it going to get normalized? And do you think that that is going to happen anytime soon? Will football be the factor that unites them all finally when the World Cup happens?
No, the boycott of Qatar by three of its neighbors, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain, in addition to Egypt, which is not an immediate neighbor, but in a broader sense, an Arab neighbor. That continues. It started in June 2017, and it still is continuing. Qatar has managed to stabilize its economy since the time the blockade started. Shipping lines have found a way to reach Qatar. Qatar Airways has opened up new destinations to various places. A lot of that has been overtaken by developments relating to the pandemic, which has posed a new set of challenges on top of what was already being faced due to the boycott of Qatar by its neighbors. But overall, Qatar has managed its economy well, its finances well, and the fact that the export of LNG from Qatar was largely uninterrupted both during the time of the boycott and during the time of the pandemic has helped Qatar deal with this in a fairly resolute manner. Now, preparations for the World Cup are also going on full steam. Qatar's original target was to try and finish off all work for the stadiums and the infrastructure development associated with the World Cup a year or year and a half ahead of schedule, and to leave the final few months only for landscape development, greening the place, etc. Now, most of the stadium related works are fairly advanced stages. My own sense is that they will still be on schedule to complete it 1 year ahead of the World Cup. So I don't see any problem. This is the first time that the Arab world will be hosting the World Cup. My own hope is that things will get better before the World Cup, and Arab fans from all over the Arab world will hopefully be able to travel to Qatar to see the World Cup and to see their own teams participating in the World Cup.
Thanks, High Commissioner, for that. Piyush, I'm just going to ask you to go on mute because we're having obviously been seeing some chatter on the audio side. Give me a second to try and fix it at my end. Hopefully we'll be able to hear the High Commissioner better now. Just a couple of other questions, and I think we're going to run out of time very shortly. We got an hour of the High Commissioner's time, and I think there are lots of questions that are continuing to come. Many of them are related to India's, there's a fallout of recent domestic policy issues affecting India's global standing as an inclusive growth economy, a secular democracy. Why does India always sit with the losers? US-USSR rivalry was going on. We sided with the USSR. So I think a bunch of questions about, you did address them a little bit earlier, but in this multipolar world where you don't need to, it's a multi-tiered model, how will India manage to come out ahead? I guess, that's the general shift of all the questions.
So, again, as I noted earlier, it's not a zero-sum game. One of the basic things to understand is that you are a rising power. For the established powers to enable you to rise, you should be seen as somebody who has geopolitical value, economic value, and you should be seen as a power whose rise is benign and which does not threaten in any way the established security and global political architecture. Now, to be able to take into account all that and still be able to rise, you have to necessarily operate a multi-layered foreign policy. You have to find a way to operate in a multipolar world with all the big poles, all the way from the greatest superpower, the US, to the other big powers, being the European Union, or Russia or China and all the other groups of countries where our significant economic and trade interests lie. So it's not a question of, we're not watching a football match that we have to take a side in a very, very straightforward manner. Our ability to rise as a power in the future depends on our ability to run a complex, multi-layered foreign policy. That needs to be understood in a very, very fundamental way. We are not taking sides here. Right from the days of the non-aligned movement, when we were a leading player, we had to view a particular situation through the prism of our own national interest. At one time, you may think your national interest lay by taking a particular position. At some other time, you operate on a different set of variables. You take a position in a way that may look contradictory or inconsistent to some people. But overall, what should define our position is our own national interest.
Thank you very much for that, High Commissioner. A couple of questions from other people that I think have somewhat been answered. Question about Piyush and Singapore, the obsession with Pakistan. Frankly, I don't know. I mean, we don't seem that obsessed with Pakistan anymore. I don't think when we are reading this, are we, maybe 10 years ago, but would you say that we are still obsessed with Pakistan as a country? I mean, aren't we more, I think, looking at China and other players? I mean,
true. As I said, we today, when I joined service, let me step back a little bit. When I joined service in '92, India was not the kind of global player it is today. Our GDP was in the range of 300, 350 billion. Today, we are an economy of 3 trillion in about roughly 25, 26 years. We've become a much, much bigger economy. We are a much bigger player in global politics today. So we've come a long way. And I remember a lot of Kashmir-related activity would make us focus our foreign policy in a big way on Jammu and Kashmir-related matters, especially in the 90s. Today, our focus is much broader. Economic matters occupy a fair amount of primacy in our foreign policy. And Pakistan, although a large neighbor, is a much, much less important issue in our foreign policy overall. But security is an important imperative for us, and managing the situation with Pakistan has implications for our security posture. And overall, our emphasis in recent years has been to ensure that we improve our own resourcing of our security structures so that we can manage the Pakistan threat better, and to make Pakistan more accountable for some of the threats, including terrorism, that it poses to us.
High Commissioner, I want to take one last question. There's a couple of questions on, I think there's some IIT alums who are like, it's fantastic to have an IIT alum. So that's, it's nice, I guess. There's some technical questions on OCIs and all that I'm sure that, we can get the consular services team to answer. There is a particular question that, is a fairly loaded question on verging on politics, but I'm going to try and give you the polite version of it with, I don't want this to degenerate into some kind of a political debate. Does India score too many self-goals in terms of our, the domestic issues, the secularism, all the things that we talk about a lot in India and kind of we are obsessed with, right? There's always all these things about the laws that are being passed and demonetization and all that. Without going into the political side of this, do you sometimes think that we score too many self-goals that don't let us get ahead, whereas China just kind of keeps marching on?
Clearly I can't get into the political aspects of the question that was posed. But overall, it's not fair to compare India with China. We are completely different systems. China, the system is fairly monolithic. It's a one-party system run by the Communist Party. In India, our strength is that we are a vibrant democracy. There are multiple opinions. For everything that is done, there is a contrarian opinion that is offered. But once again, the most important thing to note is that, for an armchair analyst, it is very easy to make suggestions, offer solutions. But for the practitioner, it is much more difficult to do something and to carry it through all the way successfully. Unless you do it, you won't understand the difficulties involved in following through on a particular policy choice. Clearly, any policy choice you adopt has costs and benefits. Nothing comes without costs. You should be prepared to hold your ground, follow a particular choice, and to pick up the costs that come along the way. I'll say that much without getting into the politics.
No, I think you said it very nicely, and I think I'd like Piyush also to reflect on it from a different point of view. I like what he just said. For the practitioner, it's a much harder thing than for us to sit and do WhatsApp and say, hey, this is easy, why do we do this? And driving change, even in the world of business and of policy, is a very hard thing. So, Piyush, I think, it's an interesting question to ask to you as well, because, this goes back to what I think the High Commissioner said. We all think that all this diplomacy, all these policies, economic is all easy. And you've driven a lot of change even in your own bank. So do you have anything to add to that, to the High Commissioner on this? Otherwise, after that, I'd like to try and also wind up this thing after getting your views on this.
Yeah, so Suresh, I think the way I think about it is you can look at India always in two ways. The glass half empty view would be to say we underperform our potential. And that is true oftentimes because in implementation and execution, many of our policies and well-meaning policies at that find it hard to take root. And so there are a lot of things which is not difficult to make the case that it was a self-goal. On the other hand, the glass half full view would be that on an absolute scale, India continues to do extremely well. I think the High Commissioner said it well, we've grown 10x over the last 25 years. That's not an insubstantial achievement. Today, the Japanese want to invest in India, the Koreans are investing in India, the Taiwanese are investing in India. If it was easy, the Chinese would put money into India. And frankly, we've just demonstrated that, we put in a chunk of money in acquiring stakes in Lakshmi Vilas Bank or acquiring the bank in India. And you have to figure that a lot of informed business leadership around Asia continues to think of India as a destination where it's okay to go and put investments in. The distinction is that most of these people are willing to take the long view. And if people ask me, why do you keep putting money into India? And the short answer is that if you take the long view, the secular prospects of India continue to be quite compelling. Not only the changes we made to the economy continues to be good. There's a rising, huge consuming class. But I think in some ways, the pandemic and the US-China tensions are going to help on other parts of the sectors as well. I think you're going to see some kind of flip to manufacturing. I think many of the policies, frankly, that this administration has put in place are not bad. I'm a fan of the GST policy. I think the bankruptcy code is very helpful. I think the land reform was helpful. I think labor policies were helpful. I think the agriculture policy recently put in place are a game changer, much like Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's policies on the industrial side in 91. Now, it's true the trickle-down effect in the execution of the policies, could be better. And I think that's exactly High Commissioner said. That's the price you pay for having a democratic system and a federal democratic system and that. But if you think through the long-term implication of some of these policies, I am optimistic.
Thank you very much. I think Piyush and the High Commissioner, we're nearly on the hour. In fact, we've just gone beyond the hour. We do have, I think, at least I took away a couple of big things on that. One, I think for the Indians and the professional community, especially in Singapore, the IIT alumni, the Thai entrepreneurs who are looking at this, is to ask ourselves a question, honestly, as to how we could do more to integrate into Singapore, recognize that there is a need to integrate more in this era of rising nationalism. And the IIM Association is going to be working on a couple of these things. But the second big takeaway is that which I think is the last point that both of you mentioned, which is it's easy to sit in an armchair and to say, hey, this is wrong, that it's wrong. But for the practitioner, we have to find a way through this multi-tiered, multipolar world that we are living in. And that is the reality. So thank you both, especially to the High Commissioner. Thank you very much for sharing your thing. I do have one important announcement to make to the community as well. And I think it talks to, I think, what Piyush and High Commissioner Kumaran have been talking about. One of the questions that we asked ourselves in the IIM alumni community is, what can we do to integrate more? And we've come up with this idea, and I think you will hear more about this in the next few days. And, we'll try and do something. It clearly is a time when we can't have big events like we used to. We can't have 500 people in a room. We can't meet, in fact, more than 5 people. But we also want to engage, we want to engage the younger people in our community and do something that's relevant to them. We want to engage outside the community with Singapore. And what we have tried to do is that, for those of you who didn't know, the 19th of December is the day the IIM Act was passed in Parliament 2-3 years ago. So from the 18th, which is a Friday evening, to the 31st of this month, you will hear about a new program that we are launching under what we call the Impulse, or the IIM Pulse brand. Something where we're trying to say, how can we get into the pulse of Singapore? And the program is called What's Your SQ? And no, the High Commissioner is not promising you a flight. What's your SQ is what's your Singapore quotient? And we're going to try to get people to get together in small groups of 5 people, as per the laws of the country, and try and discover Singapore and do something in whatever ways you can. And there'll be more exciting news coming about this program soon. I think it's our own small way of starting to make some of the steps that the High Commissioner and Piyush are talking about. The High Commissioner himself has agreed to lead one of the groups, so has Piyush, so has many of the other distinguished alums. So look out for more on this. And I do want to thank, I think Sanjeev Iyer, our past president, is there. I'm just running out of time. Sanjeev, thank you very much for dialing in. I'm sorry we couldn't get you onto the panel as well, but we'll probably do more of these events. Any closing thoughts? First, I'll go to Piyush and then the High Commissioner. This is really your event. So any closing thoughts?
Well, I guess, Suresh, this theme of IIM Pulse, as you described it, I think it's important. As you know, I've talked to several of you over the course of time. I think we as a community represent the face of India, and we are ambassadors of India. So a large part of the way Singapore and Singaporeans feel about India is reflected in the way they feel about us and what we do. Because we're successful, we are high profile, we are watched and noted. I think, therefore, if we do some of the right things, it will have a massive impact on the entire diaspora and the way the country thinks about India, Indians in the diaspora. So I do think we have an obligation, not just to the country, our host country. I think we have an obligation to our own community to try and do what we can. So kudos for getting it started.
Thank you, Piyush. And High Commissioner, any closing comments to the community and also any reactions to how we...
I fully agree with Piyush that IIM Pulse is a wonderful initiative. And I like the idea about how you branded What's Your SQ. I would personally like to be involved in this because I think the idea is really exciting, allowing people to discover some interesting aspect of Singapore, find ways to enhance integration with various communities in Singapore. My own interest is in trying to help some kind of activities related to the migrant labor community. I would very much like to be associated with any group that works on that aspect. In addition, anything that addresses enhanced cooperation with weaker sections of the population here or SMEs, etc., would be very, very exciting. In addition to anything that focuses on cultural similarities or any effort to try and bridge cultural differences. I think all that is very exciting. The Indian community in many parts of the world is seen as exemplary in terms of its effort to integrate. In the US, for example, the median income of the community is twice that of the national average. The crime rates in the community are very, very low wherever Indian communities are large. In Qatar, there was an unhesitating admission by the topmost political authorities all the way up to the Emir and also the law enforcement authorities at every opportunity that the Indian community is the best community in Qatar. For the size of the community, the crime rates are exceptionally low. And the kind of family values and the tolerance and acceptance of other faiths and other people that they brought to the table was something absolutely amazing and exemplary. So that's the kind of image the Indian community should have in all parts of the world. It is something that comes naturally to us. But at the same time, our effort should also be to try and consciously integrate with other sections that may not have been possible until now. I think that would be my main message at the end of this conversation. And I would urge all members of the community to try and make this effort conscious.
Thank you very much, Piyush, and thank you very much, High Commissioner. I don't have the permission, but I'm going to announce that Piyush will, if people behave well, Piyush will host some of you for dinner at his house, and I'm hoping the High Commissioner will do the same at India House. I haven't asked their permission. I'm being a bad boy here. But, you know, the point really is that we've had two leaders from the community, one from the business, one the first citizen of India here, really, I think, talking to us about not just the worldview and I think the complex world that we live in, but also what we as a professional community, as leaders, can do to better the image of not just our community, but I think do better for India as a whole going forward. So thank you everyone for attending this IIMChat. Piyush, thank you very much for dialing in on a Saturday evening. And High Commissioner, really obliged you for spending 2 hours of your time on a Saturday evening when you should have been making money off Piyush on the golf course.
Thank you. Thanks everybody. Bye now.
It's not a given. Sometimes he makes money off me, but thank you. It's been a wonderful interaction, and I hope that we can do this from time to time. And I actually hope to invite some of you to India House and to be able to host you whenever the situation permits.
Thank you very much for that, High Commissioner, and thank you, Piyush, and thank you to the audience for listening in today. And like the High Commissioner said, we hope to see you in this What's Your SQ, and we hope to see you in more such events in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.